I remember that you presented a paper at the ITEA, didn't you?
Yes, that was presented at the ITEA conference. That's correct.
When?
Yes.
Do you remember? Last year, the year before?
I think
or this year, or last year, or the year before?
2024. I checked.
Oh, 2024. Okay, this means now we have 2025, if I'm not wrong. That means last year. And I'm sure I've been in your sessions because I'm in your session because I'm always in your sessions. I don't want to miss any of your presentations. And now it's in the special issue of Economics of Transportation, Airline Economics. So congratulations for this.
Thank you. That was a great outlet.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's also a very good collection of papers. So we had a couple of recordings. So I talked to quite a few authors already, and it was, I think we always had quite some good discussion. So I'm really looking forward to our discussion right now. Okay. I think your topic is a little special. So first of all, no surprise if people who know Alberto know that he's doing much empirical work. So it's an empirical paper.
Yes.
And you have a co-author, and maybe you could share. It's a little bit a special topic, I would say. So I think maybe you can describe the topic and also what motivated you to work on this topic.
Okay. Yes, so this is a joint work with Alexander Luttman, or if I say in the German way, Luttman. You know it better than me how to pronounce it in German.
Does he have German roots?
Yes, he does. His father is German.
I see. Okay, good.
So this paper is titled Systematic Peak Load Pricing During Holiday Period, Evidence from the US Airline Industry. So essentially we study airline pricing, as is one of my main topic of research, and we want to study essentially the effect of peak load pricing on airline fares. So we know when there is a peak of demand, right, the price of any good goes up, and this is also for airlines. And we can think of it, especially in the airline industry, when the industry is characterized by capacity constraint. Peak load pricing can be considered a tools to price discriminate. I mean, to shift low willingness to pay consumer to off peak, and let the high willingness to pay consumer on the high peak, on the peak of demand.
And with capacity, you mean aircraft capacity, right? I mean, because airlines have just limited number of seats available, and then they need, so these limited, and so they're.
Yes, exactly. And so that's the sort of investigation we do. And essentially what we do is we want to study empirically, as you said, we want to quantify, because everybody knows that on peak, when demand peaks, price is higher. But how much is it higher, and how much, especially in an airline ticket, costs when there is a peak of demand? And also another interesting thing that we do in this paper is also that we measure the extent, the duration, if you like, of this peak effect. That means, let's consider a typical case in the US when there is a peak of demand. Thanksgiving. Everybody travels home for Thanksgiving.
Right.
So how long? So price is higher during period of Thanksgiving, but how many days before and how many days after that sort of peak of demand extends?
I see. So how long are the peak periods, so to say?
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
And so we measure this in this paper.
Can you? May I just ask, because you highlight systematic. And I think also in the title, also in the abstract. So maybe you could just say a little bit, what do you mean with what's systematic or not systematic?
Yeah, that's also a good question. And you're a good interviewer, Achim. You see that you get used, no? So basically, in the airline industry, we can define some sort of two ways of peak load pricing, okay? So what does systematic mean? Systematic means something like well-planned, methodical, right? So it's a peak of demand that I like to say is known ex ante. Like when airlines set up a flight to fly during the Thanksgiving vacation or the Thanksgiving weekend, they know that during Thanksgiving there is a peak of demand, okay? And that's systematic. So we know in ex ante there is a peak of demand. So in the airline
they are
industry,
not surprised, so to say. They are not surprised, so they can plan ahead.
On the other hand, there is also another type of peak load pricing in the airline industry, which we do not study in this paper, but we actually study in another paper with other co-authors in the same issue of where this paper is published. So it's not in the special issues, but it's still in the same economic of transportation.
Okay.
So actually they complement each other. So I think that the editor did a very good job in pairing these two papers. Anyway, so in the other paper that we do with other co-authors, we study what is called stochastic peak load pricing. So that's the other case of peak load pricing. And it's I like to call it a sort of ex post peak load pricing, in the sense that for some reason, in the example we do is a positive shock that occurs to demand, specifically the UEFA soccer tournament. So for some reason the demand peaks, but the demand peaks after the airline has put on sale the seats. Okay. So in the paper we studied, right? So if there is a soccer game, right, you know only when the team qualifies to the next round whether it's going to play it or not, and then the flights linking the teams, right, of the city where the game is played. That becomes a peak. So that's an example of a stochastic, right? So random. So in a way, systematic means no random. You know it in ex ante, and stochastic means random. You know it after you put it on sale. So there are different implications.
Thanksgiving, you know when it is. Whether your team makes it to the finals, both makes you travel, but one you know for sure when it is, and the other you don't know for sure. You know when it would happen if they would make it, but you don't know if they make it, and this introduces stochasticity.
That's precisely the difference.
I see.
So that clarifies these two streams of literature that there are on empirical
and you have
literature.
Covered both in one issue. Congratulations.
Yes. Well, there were two different papers, but I think it was clever to put the two papers in the same issue. So
yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
But we need to talk about the special issue, so I'll make a discussion about this
exactly.
paper.
No. I think actually, since they are related, it makes sense to talk about both. But of course, mainly now we put it into context. I think this very useful. And now maybe at the end we can also talk a little bit about what's the difference between systematic and stochastic peak pricing empirically. I think that would be something interesting. But maybe you can show, you can explain some of your results right now.
Yes,
maybe you can tell us, something about the data set, the difficulties in terms of methodology, and of course the estimation results. And I think at the end, because travelers don't like the airlines like the peak because they can earn a little more money, but of course the travelers don't like the peak. So maybe you have some advice for travelers how they can get around this. But anyway, let's talk about this paper, and maybe you start with the database.
I don't think there is much they can get around if they want to fly on peak. So actually we find, and also find in previous papers, so this is confirmed. I will use US data, but I have also in my previous research done that on European data. If you fly during peak, you're just going to pay high, even if you book early in advance or not. So there isn't much you can escape of. Because, what we have about data, we focus on the US market. We have more than 117 routes. Some flights are non-stop, some flights are connecting, but mostly are non-stop flights for US continental market.
Mm-hmm.
The estimating period is October. So flights departs from October 2019 to February 2020. So we decided to stop, even if we have more data, but we stopped on February 2020 because unfortunately in March 2020 there was the pandemic. So the airline pricing exhibit different patterns that we have studied in another paper. I'm just publicizing many of the papers I've done, but still with Alexander. But anyway, so we have this period. So what we have for each flight, the fares collected from 60 days to departure until the departure day on a daily basis. So if the flight does not sell out, right, we have 60 price observation for a given flight. And,
can I just ask a question? Because
yes.
I think now you are talking about posted prices or transacted prices. Did
Posted.
you use a DB?
No,
I think this is important because when people talk about US market, you will typically think about the DB1B. But I thought the DB1B would not be helpful because you know the quarter, but you don't know when it has been sold,
exactly.
right?
That's
that would be a problem. And this is why you have to use other data sources, and then you scrape some data.
That's precisely the issue. The Airbnb is not possible, it cannot be used because you cannot identify a specific flight. Here instead we know it's exactly the specific
I think you know the specific. So you don't know the specific flight? I mean, well, of course, you know origin, destination, but you don't know when, right? I think that is the...
You don't know when the flight is scheduled. So you don't know if it flies on Monday, on Thanksgiving, or Black Friday, or Christmas Eve, or whatever. You just know it's in that quarter. So, of course, there might be some flights which are off peak, but you don't know with the DB1B. And you don't also know our data set, another feature that we also know when the fare is collected. So with the DB1B, you cannot observe when the transacted fare is actually
So the intertemporal pattern, so to say, you can also observe, the prices.
It's not possible with DB1B. Alexander told me that actually the new release will actually contain eventually, I think it will start in 2025 or 2026, I don't know, but they are now putting also the day when the fare was purchased, but not now.
Okay. So, that's interesting.
Yeah, perhaps all these papers that we have written on intertemporal pricing and the fact that it's important to know when the fare is collected or the ticket is bought during the booking period is very important, right? Because it determines the price dispersion.
That's right.
So I think that's a very important measure.
But this is not relevant for this paper, right? This is not relevant for this paper.
No, I mean, we use it as a control, but obviously it's not relevant in this. Well, to some extent, you may say, it's relevant only in the sense that we show that the price is higher across the entire booking period for a peak flight. So that was the question that when you said at the beginning that you said, there is a way to turn around. So if I want to fly during Thanksgiving, of course, the earlier I book, the cheaper it is, generally speaking, but it's not as cheap as normal. So there is less price dispersion. So if you take all the price series, right, over the 60 days period, and you compare the price dispersion of an off-peak flight with a peak flight, you will see that the peak flight has a lower price dispersion. So the fares, the maximum and the minimum, loosely speaking, are more close to each other. So
I think that's intuitive, right? That makes sense, I would say. Yeah, it's
intuitive, but I mean, we prove it also in the paper. So we show it in the paper. So that's
nice.
Also
that's
another
good.
thing to
interesting
to say. Anyway, so we're discussing. So I described the data. So results. Well, actually, we focus on holidays.
Maybe you can talk wait a sec. Maybe we can talk a little bit about the methodology, because what you're using is like a two-stage least squares, right? And this is always complicated. So
yes, actually, we do use least squares. In this process of revision, they ask you to do it is because we have some competition measures, but we also estimate the OLS. And there isn't much of a difference. So I don't think and we use kind of standard instruments for market for competition variables. So I don't think that two-stage least square it's a sort of plus of our papers. I think anyway, standard methodology, panel data, and I wouldn't say it's the most important thing that we'd use two-stage least squares.
I see. That we can skip it.
Yes.
And I think the viewers, they know that they can go directly to OLS and they don't need to, maybe they don't necessarily need to think about or read the part on the instrument or variables.
the time window is relatively short, the one we use. That's also another argument. We say that actually that's why we probably we don't observe much of the difference in the estimates between OLS and two-stage least square. So the time window is essentially quite short. It's October, November, December, January, and February. So it's just 5 months. So, competition entry and exit does not occur in such a shorter period. So that's another argument.
Right. So the endogenous. Okay. So clearly peak periods are not endogenous here, because the holidays, you distinguish between national and federal holidays, but they are all exogenous.
Yes.
This is very clear. So there is no need for instrumental variable approach here. But you have what you are saying is you have in competition measure, and then people are often concerned. They say, "Oh yeah." So the level of prices will typically also be something that could either encourage, in the case of high prices, entry, or discourage entry in the case of low demands, low prices. And so there could be some problems with endogeneity. But you're saying because you are looking at just a few months, right? So then entry exit is not such a big issue, because it's not that an airline will be just entering for one day and exit the next day, or just enter. Right? This is not happening. So I think for the viewers, the message is, you just go to the OLS results and they should be fine.
Yeah, that's one of the arguments in saying that it's not a big concern. But we do both standard two-stage least square and OLS. So it's. But you mentioned about federal and national holiday. I think that's a good point to stress. Is that in the US we have two types of holiday. Let's say national holiday is those holidays that everybody has. Federal holidays are those holidays that are more in the public sector, and not all the public sector, but most of the public employee gets days off, whereas in the private sector, it's not normally a holiday. So in a way, you can think of the national holiday like as a holiday where the peak of demand is higher than the peak of demand of the federal holiday. And we do find this, that the coefficients, so that the price premium that consumer pays if they want to fly on in the period surrounding in the days surrounding the national holiday is higher. It's quantified between 4 and 83%, if I remember correctly. Whereas for the federal holiday, the premium reaches the maximum of roughly 35%. So you see with federal, the price premium is lower.
It makes sense, right? Because I think the argument really is, I think this is what you said, that basically during a national holiday, everybody's traveling. During a federal holiday, only part of the population is traveling. So the demand effect is just more.
Exactly. But it's nice, you see, when all your expectations are met in the data, because we are all testing something that everybody think, well, it should be here like this, and indeed it's like this. We confirm things. And another nice thing that we find in the data is that our federal holidays occurs on Mondays. So in our sample, actually, we also have Veteran Days for Veterans Day, which in our year occurs on Monday. So we are lucky that the year of our sampling period, all our federal holidays in our sampling period occurs on Monday. So what we find is that the price premium is the highest between Friday and Monday of the federal holiday. So people are taking the Friday so that to enjoy the longer weekend, and then on Monday when they need to return, the flight is the highest has the highest price. If you want to fly on Tuesday, that's a bit cheaper, and then if you fly on Wednesday, that's even cheaper. So the only turnaround I can say is do not fly during peak periods. Just fly in between if you can.
Of peak.
And on the national holiday, we do find still this effect that the extent of the holiday on the flight that departs before the holiday are more expensive, but that's a wider period. So it starts from roughly 7 days before you're already seeing the flight going up So if, for example, if I fly
ticket
7
prices.
days before, the price, yes. So if I fly 7 days, if I fly on a flight that departs 7 days before Christmas, for example, you already see that the price is picking up, is 4%, 5% higher than the average. And
I see.
So that's one of the main results we have.
Okay, good. I think this is interesting. I think all the results are very intuitive, and I think the price premium during national holiday is around like twice as high than compared to federal holiday. Is this about the order of magnitude?
The magnitude is much higher. Like as I was saying, it even reaches a maximum of 83% than the average, whereas the federal holidays reaches 35% of maximum price.
So
premium.
even more than twice as high in average, so to say.
Yeah. Then what else? In our paper we also explore different heterogeneities. That means we, for example, study the same, the price premium on shorter or longer or medium routes. Mm-hmm. And the idea is we separate the routes between routes that are less than 500 miles, between 500 miles and 1,000 miles, and above 1,000 miles, so like short, medium, and long routes. And the idea is that when the route is short, car can be, I don't say much of public transport because US, you don't have public transport. But if you are in Europe, I would also have public transport. But anyway, you have other means of transport that can substitute, right? But for longer routes, medium and longer routes, these do not occur. So you don't take a car if you need to fly more than 1,000 miles. I mean, technically you could, but it will take you much longer. And in fact, we do find that the price premium is higher on the longest route, which makes sense precisely to what I said. When there is no substitutes, then you can implement more the pricing discrimination strategy of the peak load pricing. So that's one nice result.
Is there another explanation for this rather than road? Because I think the road example really is, I would say, if you talk about medium, or I wouldn't necessarily understand why it should make a difference for medium compared to long haul. I understand short, right? Is there maybe some other explanation? Did you look, when you look at is it the percent, what you are saying is the percentage premium, right? Is higher. Yes. Because in absolute values, of course, it's higher because in general, long distance flights will be more expensive. So you put something higher. Also the premium would be higher, but in percentage term, relatively speaking, maybe not. But I think what you're saying is also in terms of percentages, it's higher.
Yes, of course. Thank you for clarifying this. Yes, of course, because obviously a flight like a 10 hours, a red-eye flight is obviously, generally more expensive than like a short flight. That's true, like the ticket itself. But I say
how about direct, non-direct? How about direct versus connecting flights? Is there a difference? And then also competition, because we started talking about competition with the endogeneity, but how about direct versus connecting flights?
So we do have I think a variable for non-stop. I'm not sure if we have it included. Let me check. Most of our flights are non-stop. So also we do have actually, we included a dummy variable for connecting flight in our sample. And we don't find any difference in terms of this variable is not statistically significant. I just checked. I have a printed out.
How about LCCs versus full service carriers?
Okay, that's another. We actually did 4 heterogeneities. We checked for 4 heterogeneities. One is precisely on the carrier type. And we separate between legacy carriers, so American, United, and Delta. And we call it hybrid, or low cost. And then what we, so like JetBlue, JetBlue, for example, it's an example of low cost. And we have also what these days are called ultra low cost carrier, like Spirit or Frontier. And we do find actually that the price premium, surprisingly in the sense, just to give you emphasis on the result, but I don't think it's too much surprising, is that ultra low cost carriers, which are those carriers which normally have the lowest price, is where they have the highest price. So it's quite of interest in the sense that, I mean, I also observed this here in Europe with Ryanair, that
what you are saying is what you are. So what if I understand?
The premium, the travel premium is higher on ultra low cost carriers.
In absolute or relative terms?
In relative terms, yes.
And in absolute terms, because that would also, because they have lower fares, right? So if they increase by the same amount, it means that relatively speaking, it's higher.
No,
but
you're right. No. We have the log of fare. Let me check. Let me think. No, I think it's in relative, right? Because it's a log of fare, so it's in relative terms, yes.
I see.
Still, in terms of the company's profit, it's means that they have a higher markup in percentage terms. Yeah, of course, in absolute terms, you're saying that
it's unclear, right? I would say it's unclear. We don't. If you just look at the logs, then you wouldn't know.
Yes, well, we do have some graphs calculating just the descriptive statistics to have the average fares. So it's which shows that ultra low cost carrier have a lowest fare. But I mean, what is interesting, I think, is that they do much. What I mean is they do much more premium in relative terms, so that they engage much more into price premium by period pricing than legacy carrier. That's what I meant.
And how about competition? Well, we would think that a competition would tame this effect, I would say.
Okay, we didn't explore is in the sense that we didn't, because all the heterogeneity I did, we just separate the samples and so with competition we just had it as a control. So we didn't do it, but one alternative would have been to split the market between, say, high concentrated market and no concentrated market, but we didn't do it, so we just include it as a control. As I said, we weren't too interested in this. We wanted to explore more a bit of the route characteristics that besides competition. So I mean, that's what we did it.
I see. Okay. There's something else. I mean, we always talk about, when we talk about aviation, we always talk about,
for example. Because I know you like slot control. So, for example, one heterogeneity that we explore was the slot control. So because you see with slot control, DCA, LaGuardia, JFK, right? These airports are constrained in terms of capacity. So it's not that you can fly as many flights as you want.
That's right.
So we explore this capacity constrained airport, and we do find some evidence for national holiday in terms of a bit higher price premium, but not as much on federal holidays. So I wouldn't say that this slot control matters a lot in this. What I mean is that, like, the price premium is not much difference between slot destination, which has one endpoint that's slot controlled, and other destination which they don't have.
I don't think you have a frequency, right? But I'm also not sure whether frequency would somehow matter. Or let's say you have a route with a high frequency, would you then? How would that affect?
You mean high frequency of the same airline?
Yeah. That's what I would think. If you have a higher frequency,
well, you can switch.
I'm not sure whether this is anything that makes, whether in this context of frequency is something that would be interesting to consider.
Well, I mean, you could say that if there are more flights, right, I can switch from one flight to another, right, in my decision. But if there are more frequency, then it's because there is more demand. So I don't know. I mean, it's a bit, it's not univocal to figure it out, the effect.
Right. Excellent. So I think this is a very nice addition to the special issue.
Thank you, Achim, for giving us the possibility to to describe this paper. And if anyone of the audience wants to reach me or Alexander, you can Google my name or Alexander, and we're happy to discuss it more.
Yeah, we have a link. Actually, I will put
cool.
in the description down below. I will add a link to this special issue or to your paper, and of course, there are the contact details can be found over there, right?